It's a glorious morning here at Brands Hatch. Welcome to the second Sprint Cup round of this year's Blancpain GT Series. The cars making their way out on track in readiness for 1 hour of free practice. The format for this being that the amateurs and the bronze drivers can go first. They get half the session to themselves, so they're not constantly in fear of being blown off the circuit by the faster, more professional gun drivers. They get the track time to themselves. It's an important part of the morning to do some circuit learning, especially on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch, because it's a good old school circuit, limited runoff. It's one the drivers all absolutely love, and it's going to give us two dramatic races this weekend. David Addison and John Watson trackside. And John, this very much is a proper place.
I mean, it couldn't be more beautiful. The track looks stunning. It's a gorgeous day, a bank holiday weekend, of course, May Day and all that stuff. But it's just as good as it can get at Brands Hatch. And when you leave what is called the Indy Circuit or the bowl at Brands Hatch and you go out down Hawthorne, into Hawthorne's Corner, all the way through those charismatic, almost have to say, sections of the racetrack. In fact, at some points, you think you're driving down some leafy Kent lane. It is that beautiful until the race car goes on track, and then, of course, it all changes.
Now, this session gives the drivers a chance to explore the circuit. It could be the first time some have raced on the Grand Prix venue at Brands Hatch. You look there down overlooking the pit straight, and the pit lane is going to be very busy indeed, of course, when we get to that mandatory pit stop window, 25 to 35 minutes within the races. Now, John, within a free practice session like this, what, if anything, can we expect the teams to be doing? I've mentioned the fact that we've not got every car, not every driver eligible for this first half of the session, but what are they going to do with tyres? Old tyres, for example?
Well, they'll be starting on the best of the rest from the first round, which was in Zolder about 3-4 weeks ago. So then the new sets that they will have, they want to hold back, obviously, as many sets as possible. One new set per the two events, the two single races, and of course then for qualifying as well. And all these little elements will be considered by the teams. And if you've got a set of rubber, the best set left from Zolder, then you're going to be in good shape. As we look at one of the cars, the 88 Mercedes-Benz, which, whether it's a bronze driver or a platinum driver, that's a car that will always, as you look at 35, it's got the paint colour of the 88, in fact. So just go out, do your miles, cycle your drivers through, and then once you've reached the basic baseline, then start doing the work for the weekend. 35, currently driven by Alexis Kornev, who's come out of karting through Formula 4, Formula Renault, but he'll be new to Brands Hatch. Quite a few drivers new to the circuit, so he's one of those for whom this extra track time is very, very important indeed. The best lap time that we've had thus far in the session is Nico Bastien, winner in Blancpain GT Series Asia's opening round, and he has done a 1:27.137. That's the target time, ahead of Stuart Leonard, last year's sprint champion. But again, because he's still a graded driver, he's able to take part in this session as well. Now we're looking at the exit of the notorious, to some people, Padicle Bend, then up the hill into Druid, one of the favourite parts of the racetrack where overtaking is possible but equally easily defended. So the Mercedes just slides out of the way. That's Peter Shorthorst. He said Shorthorst when I spoke to him in Zolder. So all the way down Brabham straight into Surtees, and from here on, this is where you go out onto what is still known as the Grand Prix circuit of Brands Hatch, but of course it is no longer a venue for any Grand Prix.
So Scott Horst at the moment is the fastest, so he is 0.398 of a second up on everybody else, and we are getting improvements in sectors from Stuart Leonard, from Nico Bastien as the session continues. It's an hour in total, and we've got then now Peter Scott Horst on a 1:26.739, and Nico Bastien goes slightly faster, 1:26.617. So you've got Mercedes at the moment topping the times. There is Peter Scott-Horst, then the Dutch driver, one of the two of the Scott-Horst family, because his brother Steyn Scott-Horst, he's on the entry as well. He was down in the first sector. He was a personal overall best in the second, and the lap time puts him back at the top, 1:26.487 then. The number 7 Audi being run by the Temto team. A thick car.
Just slightly of a ramp coming into Druids. I don't know whether he felt something wasn't quite right. He took a very early entry into Druids, consequently overran the corner, ran wide on the outside. So this lap that he is currently on will reflect that in terms of overall times. That's more like it, watching the 26 Audi make its way through and exiting down into Graham Hill Bend. Markers on the inside of the corner to prevent the usual thing, drivers trying to take advantage of the inside of a corner. And on the outside of Graham Hill Bend there are pressure pads, which if a driver puts all four wheels off the racetrack there, will be notified in the race director's office, and action can be sanctioned if necessary, depending whether it was a one-off or if it's a consistent one. Then definitely you will have your times deleted, and you can even have to come in and have a meeting with race director and explain what you've been doing.
Neil Stevenart you're looking at the moment in this car that he shares with Marcus Winkelhock. And Neil Stevenart is 12th fastest. In fact, he's only really done one proper lap time, so he's somebody else learning about the circuit. He's done the 24-hour series, he's done a bit of Blancpain Endurance and V2V, but a relative newcomer to Brands Hatch.
So just some 7 minutes into the session, and now you're going to see drivers having completed maybe 3 flying laps, an out lap and an in lap, 5 in total, come in. There may be a change of driver, or then they may just have a look at the car and decide, well, at what point do we want to start then looking at making alterations or changes. But because Brands Hatch is new to so many drivers, really it takes more than just the 3 flying laps to get a feel. This is a challenging racetrack. I mean, every corner offers up major challenges. And for example, Loris Hazeman's in the Lamborghini Huracan, and that's not the line you take at Paddock Bend. I mean, there's an example of not knowing the racetrack, and the problem is you come up into Paddock Bend, you don't see the apex, you have to commit to it before you actually get to it, and there it is once you've made the commitment. But I think he was looking for it and realised he'd passed it.
So Hazeman's then in the Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini, a little bit wide as well, coming out of Graham Hill Bend. He shares this car with Franck Pereira. We'll get to Franck Pereira in due course. 55 Peter Schotthorst being warned about track limits at Graham Hill Bend. John was making a point about certain parts of the circuit having these pressure pads. That is one of them. And so Schotthorst, who is the fastest, or who was the fastest rather, being warned. I say was because his brother is now the quickest. So from Peter to Stein Schotthorst at the top of the times, 1:25.600, and then Stein Schotthorst goes quicker still, 1:25.465. So double Dutch this, the top two, the brothers Schotthorst, and then Nico Bastien is currently 3rd fastest. Nico Bastien, the German in the Mercedes.
And really, and as on most circuits, once you get into the rhythm, and again, Loris Hazeman's not looking overly confident, probably trying to drive a little bit, maybe too quickly, too soon, until he gets a feel for the car and the circuit. So, young driver getting a great opportunity with the Grasser Racing Lamborghini team up the hill into Paddock Bend. Let's see whether he this time finds the apex. It's still not quite right, but it's work in progress, and it's getting better.
So where is Hazeman's in the classification at the moment? The answer is that he is to be found 8th. There are 14 that have ventured out for this first part of the session, and we've got 20 in total for this round of the Blancpain GT Series Sprint Cup. So the majority of the field are out there, including the Ian Loggy Team Parker Bentley that he shares with Callum McLeod, regulars in British GT. Hazeman's presses on then, out of Surtees onto the Grand Prix loop now. He's actually managed to get the road to himself pretty much here. We'll be saying it, I'm sure, when we get to the races and Lappery, but Brands is not the widest of circuits, so you've got to be brave to pick your way through the traffic, haven't you, here? You
do, and that is one of the issues that drivers will say, that they love coming to Brands Hatch. It's a wonderful circuit to drive on, but like so many circuits these days where you get very, very close competition, and with the balance of performance equalising almost to fractions of a second the overall performance of everybody through the grid. Therefore, the downside is, how do you find a way past a competitive car, or a car that you might even need to lap? So there are a variety of places around the circuit where passing is easier, but coming up into Paddock Bend is generally not believed to be one of them, unless you can get alongside as you get up into Paddock Bend and take the inner line, get the car planted on the inside, and then just simply slow the car, the other car you're passing, slow it down, because you're just basically modulating your brake pedal to try and keep yourself in control, and also keep the car you've overtaken from re-overtaking you with the undercut as you come out of Paddock Hill Corner and then run up into Druids. So it's that undercut that's always careful. You need to be sure that you've effectively neutralised that opportunity.
Now here's somebody that has raced on the Grand Prix circuit before, but never in a GT car. Aaron Taylor-Smith, who's come from Clio's through the British Touring Car Championship, will have raced on the Grand Prix circuit, but up until this season, he's never raced a rear-wheel drive car. So forsaking touring cars in favour of GT racing, loving it as well. And he's found a happy berth with Stuart Parker's jolly team, Team Parker Racing. He's got Josh Cahill with him that we saw at WRT last season in an Audi, but the two of them working quite nicely together, and Aaron Taylor-Smith looking forward to the home round of Blancpain Sprint. Got lots of his old touring car mates coming to cheer him on. Runs really wide out of paddock though.
Yes, and very easy. About a number of years ago, we saw Maximilian Book when HTP were running Bentleys, and he got it wrong in the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, and the car just snapped to the right, and it literally slammed into the tire barriers on the inside of the circuit, did a lot of damage to the car. Max Book was fine, but it is so easy. On that last bit, the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, you catch the curb and you catch it wrongly, and it can just snap the car, literally as in the case of Max Brook, sideways and into the barrier.
Now more and more of the team cycling through pit stops at the moment as Aaron Taylor-Smith presses on. This car, the earlier generation of Bentley, if you like, the original Bentley, we saw in the opening endurance round at Monza, the new car with the different aero packages amongst other things and the different location of the engine, but this is the original car. And it didn't really light Zolder, but should go better around Brands Hatch. The team coming here with a little bit more optimism for the weekend, that's for sure.
Well, it is a home race, and normally, and particularly if you are familiar with Brands Hatch, then those two values come together, and hopefully you can look to have good qualifying principally to give you the grid position to try and then use that knowledge, that experience, and get yourself some points.
Now we've also got Stuart Leonard looking pretty rapid, just thinking about home races, because the British driver for WRT has done the absolute best within the first sector. Aaron Taylor-Smith currently is 7th fastest. He improved last time, in fact, on the 26.8. But he's got to find 1.4 seconds yet to get onto the same sort of pace that the top Audis are doing. Now there is Stuart Leonard, who is absolutely flying here. He's about to get to the end of the second sector. Stuart, who's done a lot of miles in a relatively short space of time, came from Caterhams into the Endurance Cup with Aston Martin and then into WRT. First race he had with Vincent Voss's team was to win the Sepang 12 Hours. He comes through Clark Curve now. He's done an absolute best. He's done a personal best. The speed build, look, nearly 190 kilometres coming out of Clark Curve, over 200 as he comes across the timing line. And he goes fastest of all, a 1:25.275. So Stuart Leonard goes top. Now, John, can he go any quicker?
Well, what he's doing is displaying confidence behind the wheel of the Audi, knowledge of Brands Hatch, and the two elements coming together. But it's what, 0.190 quicker than the 66 Audi. But nevertheless, it's well, that's what you have to be careful. The exit of Greenhill Bend, Stuart Leonard just getting the two wheels off the racetrack and using the available extra space, but there's a penalty if you abuse it. Fastest overall in Sector 1. So to answer your question, he's going quicker in this lap.
So can he get us into the high 24s here? Well, the other one that might be able to have a go back at him is Ezequiel Perez Companc in the Grasser Lamborghini, because he has done a personal and then an absolute best. So Companc here is also looking very, very quick. You're looking at Stuart Leonard. Companc is ahead of him on the road, in fact, so we'll get a lap time out of the Lamborghini before the Audi. Companc currently is 6th fastest. Up to the end of Sector 2 goes Stuart Leonard, and Companc lost time in the last sector, so went no quicker. So Stuart Leonard is still the fastest, therefore. Now we had him at, what, 222 kilometres an hour last time, coming over the timing line. Audi picks up pace now out of Clark Curve, takes the apex up towards the line. A 25.2 to beat, and he does a 24.979. We do get him into the high 124s. That is the best lap of the session, and it's 0.486 quicker than anybody else. And at the moment, you've got the top four all being Audis.
Looks like it could be an Audi race, but a long way to go, because when you start getting some of the usual suspects, particularly the 63 Grasser Racing Lamborghini, the 88 Mercedes, I mean, look through the field, it's very difficult not to say every driver car pairing has got some opportunity, but Stuart Leonard, I mean, his confidence really over the last season coming into 2018, you can see how much progress he has made. And of course he knows that with a competitive car, he's got Frederick Vavish co-driving with him this weekend. Whether that will work in his favour, normally you would expect to see Robin Frains, I think, with him. But Frederick Vavish in that 17 Audi.
Yeah, it's a busy weekend of international motorsports, so lots of teams in different championships having to shuffle drivers. Now here you've got the Lucas Moraes and Andrew Watson BMW, this car operated by the 3Y Technology team, the French team. So Andrew Watson we see in a McLaren in the Endurance, but a BMW in the sprint rounds. And it is Lucas Moraes from Brazilian touring cars, currently behind the wheel of a car that's done precious few laps and is actually the slowest by quite some margin. You get the feeling that all is not well with this car because it doesn't actually look that racy, does it?
Well, just watching the car coming through some of the corners around the back of the circuit, Westfield, then into Sheen Curve, or what used to be known as Dingle Dell, it looked to me as if the damping of the car was maybe not quite where it would need to be. It didn't look to be a comfortable or easy car to commit to. Again, watching it coming through, Paddy Kilben dropping down into the compression at the very bottom, looks as if there's not yet the level of what you might call confidence to be able to get on the throttle, drive the car hard through the corner and run it up into Druid's corner.
It's a bit ragged coming out of Graham Hill Bend as well. The BMW M6 then, it's good to have different teams coming into the championship, but yeah, again, the car looks nervous going into Surtees. There's a long way for this team to go. I know perhaps it's on old tyres, which isn't helping, but even so, it just does not look a comfortable car to drive. Not really.
Sometimes if a driver is not feeling that the car is with him, then you lose that confidence, and therefore, in effect, you're never going to be able to drive through the problem. But I would imagine that in reality, he would be best placed to complete his run, whatever it is. You can see going through Westfield, the back end is just almost hop, skipping and jumping over those bumps, and that's not really a feeling that a driver wants. Again, the back of the car, moving to the back of the car, giving to me a sign that that car needs to have some work carried out, and it pulls way over to the left and let the Lamborghini go through, which was well observed.
But for 3Y Technology, you get the feeling this might be a long day, really. The car stays out, I think, or is he going to bail for the pit lane? No, he stays out, so trying to do the miles, but will they be better advised bringing that car in and using the time to try and get on top of whatever drama they've got? In the meantime, Stuart Leonard is the fastest now by a tenth from Ezequiel Perez Companc. You're looking at the Ferrari, which is Piti Birambakti at the wheel of it, the man whose family owns Singer Beer. So he's a good guy to know, but this very spectacularly liveried Ferrari, run by the Kessel team, that has raced in Asia and then did the Sepang 12 Hours for a couple of seasons in its second season of European racing with the redoubtable Carlo Van Dam as co-driver yet again. And Piti Birambakti getting quicker season on season, benefiting from the help of his Dutch co-driver. And that car has been found currently 10th fastest and actually is quickest in its class.
Yeah, so there's the Pro-Am, Piri Birambakti behind the wheel. So Ferrari 488, I mean, it's about as quick as you're going to get. There's only the one of them here this weekend. So watch and see what kind of time can we expect. Well, the 127.1, that's still, yeah, 10th place. And that, again, not being quite sure where the apex is and trying to find it before you commit. And the other thing about Paddy Kilben, the actual best line is the most uncomfortable line for a driver to take, but that's where those of local knowledge, they hang out much later and they approach up into the bend before they make their commitment. Because you can't see it, the natural thing for a driver to do is hover more in the middle of the road, because it gives you that little bit of a safety blanket if you do get it wrong.
So Ezequiel Perez Companc is now the quickest. He's done a 124.754 with Stuart Leonard second fastest, a fifth of a second back, and then up to third quickest now is 87, Nicolas Jamin, who is in the best of the Mercedes. So Nicolas Jamin is another driver new to Brands Hatch, going third, and at the moment we've got the top five all within just over 7/10 of each other, so very competitive up at the front.
As we go back to the Ferrari, coming through Sheen Curve, then into Sterling's corner that has not changed, but the runoff, more importantly, has changed, but the corner again, the curb on the exit, you're just catching a glimpse of it, that red and white curbing is very, very unforgiving. And we've seen time immemorial cars riding the curb, and again, that's very rapid snap, and there is nowhere on the inside of the circuit or the outside of the circuit to go if you lose control of your car there. It will inevitably be an impact with the barriers on the left-hand side or those on the right.
Now, Biron Bakhti is down to 11th because we had an improvement last time from Alexei Kornev up to 9th. So Biron Bakhti on a 1:28.6 last time falls to 11th in the times. And we are getting towards the last 10 minutes now of the circuit only being for the bronze and silver drivers. So remember, it's for the second half of the session. We're about 8 3/4 minutes away from that. Then everybody can go out. So now is the opportunity, your final opportunity really, to maximise the clear track space. You're looking at the Attempto Audi of Stein Schotthorst coming down the hill.
And now that is an example of running virtually, but you couldn't get closer to having all four wheels off the racetrack at the bottom of Graham Hill Bend. It'll be interesting to see if there's any notifications on timing and scoring to advise the team that you must not do that. In the meantime, car 37, that's the 3Y technology BMW, must respect track limits at T2. Now T2 to me is Druids, and that's not a corner where you normally see drivers abusing track limits. All I can think is maybe on the exit he got the car maybe too far off to the left, but not somewhere normally you see a message for track abuse limits.
And ironically, that's still the car that's the slowest. It has got faster, but it's still quite a chunk away from the pace, 1.2 seconds off the penultimate time. Now, how the Audi's doing, it's, of course, shifted slightly now, with the Lamborghini being the top car in this first half of free practice 1. Today, they get the 2 free practice periods, of course, before we worry about qualifying. And over the timing line will now go 66 Stein Schotthorst, who goes no quicker, 1:25.497.
That exit, every time a car runs almost all four wheels off the track and runs that, it's a very user-friendly curve in most respects, but it's the outer edge of the curve where it does drop away quite quickly, and that's what will flick a car, from being in control to being out of control. And just watching the 66 Audi coming through there was not a lot left before you could be beginning to think you're into the trouble zone.
And a red flag is being shown, a red flag. So somebody has had, a big moment, a very big moment coming out of Sterling's.
Yes, that's the Mercedes.
Alexei Kornev.
Exactly, look, you can see what's happened. Coming out of Sterling's, the car's ridden the curb, he's floored the throttle, and has just gone straight left into that barrier. And that is sadly not a sight we wish to see, because an impact there will do a lot of damage to your car, and you can see that the Mercedes has hit the barrier on the left-hand side, has bounced back, come to a halt in the middle of the racetrack. So immediately the race director has thrown the red flag. There was no question that there was any other choice. So that car will have to be. And I wonder, did we saw, was it the McLaren last year? You may not be here, David. I think one of the McLarens last year did the same thing. Caught the curb badly and just turned sharp left. I think it might have been Loris Hazeman, in fact.
Rings a bell, that actually, yes. Car 35 hit the barrier at turn 8 is the message on the timing screen. The damage makes it seem a lot more serious than that. But first of all, the car needs retrieving, then the debris needs sweeping up, and then the barriers will need to be attended to as well, because the Mercedes headbutting them is going to do some damage. Because this is free practice, of course, the clock carries on ticking. So all of this eats into the available time that the teams had afforded to them. So they all come back into the pit lane. Yes, they can work on the cars. Yes, they can do a driver change if required, but they can't go out onto the circuit until we get the green flag, and they don't get this time added on at the end.
No, and it's going to take a little time for one of the recovery vehicles to get to the Mercedes, get it onto the flatbed and then for the marshals around the circuit just to clear the racetrack. And of course, carbon fiber shards, we know how damaging they can be, but the question is, was there damage to the barrier that would preclude this session getting underway quickly, or is it going to be in sufficiently good condition? That's not a problem.
And it is 5 to 10 local time. They're on track again at 12:30, so it's going to be a very, very difficult day to get that car ready for the second session. So it might be that car we don't see again today. So as the marshals go to work, we'll get that car off the circuit as quickly as. Here's the end of the incident. He's already lost it, and then look, kaboom, does the front, does the back, blimey, airborne as well. That was a very big hit, John.
It was a big hit, and it was right front and right side. It almost got sort of slammed into the barrier, flush with the right-hand side, but the kinetic energy involved in an impact like that was illustrated by the way the car then bounced off the barrier and got airborne. Fortunately, didn't stay high or off the ground terribly long, but the car will be heavily damaged on the right-hand side. It depends whether it just is cosmetic, but normally you're going to say an impact like that, you're going to do one corner, a lot of body work, and hopefully the chassis rails, which are a part of all these GT cars, if that is damaged, that would then be a more serious concern for the team.
So the fans studying the program, aspiring GT drivers have got their own Audis, yet to go through scrutineering, but
nobody told me Katie Price was coming.
Not sure it worked, pink Audi. Red flag shown, session stopped, and the countdown continues. 33 minutes remain, so it's going to be a short blast when the teams do go back out again. But Ezequiel Perez Compang, it is at the moment the fastest by just 0.225 of a second. I can see one of the MSV, Brands Hatch circuit vehicles going out with all the apparatus required to go and attend to the barriers. Of those that haven't really yet got going, it's hard to gauge properly because not everybody has been out, and we always make this point about free practice. It's not about times, it's about working through a program, cycling through whatever you need to, as well as getting the driver the track time. And Alexei Korneev's car, very second-hand indeed. The clerk of the course has arrived, Barry Morris, in the black jacket to talk to the marshals and have a look at the scene. And kathunk, there's one impact, there's the second with the rear. So it's done the car no good, it's done the barrier no good. And look at the bits that fly. I mean, you're right about the kinetic energy, but the whole thing, it brings litter, debris, everything onto the track. The grill is there in the middle of the road, look. That's a big hit.
It was a big hit. The good aspect, in a way, was the car did bounce off the barrier. So all the energy that was involved in the initial impact has been dissipated by the car coming back onto the circuit. So it'll be a right front for sure, a right rear undoubtedly, a load of body work, the cooling, the brake ducts, the water oil radiators. The main thing is when they strip all those parts off, and they all come off very easily and quickly. One of the things you get when you buy a turnkey car like a Mercedes-AMG GT3 is they are designed to be very easily maintained, worked upon, so all the bits will come off quickly. Then the microscopic investigation to see if there's anything structurally with the suspension components and mountings, and then the chassis rails themselves.
Now that car run by ASP, which has proved itself to be one of the top Mercedes teams, Jérôme Policon's team, the ASP bit being his squad, Autosport Promotion, and ACA being Jean-Luc Bobelic's company that funds it. But that car is going to need a lot of work, and I would be surprised if we saw it out for FP2 looking at the damage. It might get out for the end of it, but they've only really got 2.5 hours to try and rebuild that car, and they've not yet got it back.
And again, it's just an illustration of the unforgiving nature of particularly Sterling's Bend. That particular curb, it's there, it's been there since, well, I don't know how long it's been there, a very long time, and it still catches people out.
Now we've got 10 minutes before the session restarts, and when it does restart, everybody will be allowed in it. So let's just remind ourselves what's been happening thus far. Green flag flew, and early Loris Hezemans was taking up attention. Stuart Leonard was hustling on in the WRT Audi in the grey and yellow colours, a bit of a wobble going through Hawthorns.
And that was, again, using the curb and almost incorrect use. There's the curb that caught out the 35 Mercedes just a few moments ago.
Pressing on was Lucas Moraes in the BMW, Pitibert and Bakti in the Singavia backed Ferrari. Another one exploring the circuit early on and using all of the curb and then some was Stein Schockhorst in the Attempto Racing Audi. So the drivers are being told, or the teams are being told about this barrier damage. We also now know that the restart should be in 10 minutes time. All drivers will be allowed at the restart, so they're going to have effectively 20 minutes when the session gets back underway.
Yes, and it'll be 15 minutes in total probably by the time from the point where the incident occurred to getting the track going green again. So those 15 minutes you mightn't think will have any impact or loss to teams, but they love their 1 hour sessions because there's enough work to use that time productively. So and particularly for the pro drivers who are now going to be able to join in, they will want to filter through their 2 drivers as quickly as possible. So in, out, driver change, in, out, driver change, and that's just before you even think about making any technical changes to the car.
So the clock ticks on down, and the teams will get whichever driver they want to try and run next into the car in readiness. Then they don't really want to be wasting any more time in those 20 minutes by pitting. But we're not going to see much more of 35 Mercedes, sadly. Vladimir Atuev and Alexei Kornev, the 2 young Russian drivers, then certainly out of this session, possibly out of free practice 2, maybe even out of the weekend, depending on how bad the damage is and how you are for parts. But I'd be surprised if we saw that car again today, that's for sure.
Well, there'll be a lot of work, and the team will get the car back, I suspect, within the next 10, hopefully, or so minutes. And then you go to the Mercedes-AMG GT3 customer service support vehicle with roughly a list of parts you think you might need. And if you want them, then you pay for them, take them away, and start the process of reassembling a car that was in a pretty sorry-looking state. And well, everybody around the racetrack just enjoying what was a beautiful day at Brands Hatch. All the marshals just having a quiet cup of coffee, and one of our Crow family friends doing a bit of worming, I would say, looking around for a bit of food, grubbing away.
That'll soon scatter when car's released. We understand that Alexei Kornev is going to the medical centre just for checks, but did walk to the ambulance, so he was walking around.
Not much time to work things out.
So race control keeping everybody informed. There's the back of the so-called Grand Prix paddock, the old Formula 1 pits. The support races all go on the outside of Paddock Hill Bend, because you just can't get everything into that old pits. But over the years, John, bits of Brands Hatch have changed. You know, corners have been slightly reprofiled, but because of the topography of the place and the housing up on the Grand Prix loop quite close to it, you can't do much in the way of changing. So largely it is as it was in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s.
Very much so, and where the pits, the current pits, are located, in effect, they are in an island within the racetrack, and there is no more space. All they can do, well, there's 2 things they could do. One is they could build up.
Yeah.
What that would serve, I do not know. Or, as is the case, in looking at a bit of, is that a Spitfire, is that a Mustang? I can't quite see it from that angle, but all they can do is either go up, or as the case in London where people can't buy land, they go down.
Go down, yeah.
But I don't think either would serve any purpose. There were, I think, at one point outlined thoughts about a complete reconfiguration of Brands Hatch as a race circuit, part of which would incorporate bits of what are now public viewing areas, and then beyond that into car parks. But I think with the contract for the British Grand Prix being signed on a long-term deal elsewhere, then that opportunity didn't come to fruition. Lots of nature around now. What is that? Is that a red kite? Or red kites are becoming very prolific, particularly on the M40. Oh yeah, they love it. They love a bit of roadkill on the M40. Believe me. They were reintroduced maybe 10, 20 years ago, 20 years probably, and they've been a great success. But they, if you're driving up and down the M40 and you see a bit of aviation above you, it'll most likely be a red kite.
It's not running too much wing, that red kite, either.
That's a 2-seater Spitfire. A trainer, possibly.
Which isn't the sort of thing you see every Saturday morning around here.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, I don't know where that would be maintained. It might have come from nearby, or somebody's just doing a flyover and there sees Brands Hatch in action. Anyway, great to see it.
Absolutely. And it's great to have Blancpain twice in the UK, because in a fortnight's time the Endurance Cup will be at Silverstone. So for British fans, the month of May, a real GT treat. There was British GT a week ago at Rockingham, another SRO championship. And of course British GT goes to both Brands Hatch in August and Silverstone in June for its 3-hour race. So you're well served in Britain with GT racing. And also this weekend here, in fact, is the European GT4 series that has got a 44-car entry. It's an enormous grid. The Blancpain GT3 cars, though, you're looking at down in the pit lane. ACA ASP's fleet of Mercedes now somewhat affected with the wreck of number 35. It's hard to assess how bad that is until we see the car away from the incident zone, but not hugely optimistic that we're going to see it again today. The scrutineers will want to have a look as well at the end of the work, just to make sure that it's done safely and satisfactorily.
Well, it'll be a lot of work for the S&P race team, and they'll have to, well, I think it's one of those situations where if you can get it ready, but if there's any doubt, then just take time and get the car ready, and hopefully it might make it into qualifying.
That BMW we were talking about earlier on, 37, the 3Y technology car, Andrew Watson, one of the drivers, of course, running that, Bas Linders, who, of course, will have had that relationship with Andrew in his McLaren days, but they've got some work to do with that car. Andrew Watson's not yet got into it. If you want to know who drives what, you need a spotter's guide at Brands Hatch. That's the document that has each driver, each car, so you know who is driving what. And shortly, we should get this session back underway. I reckon we're about 3 minutes away from the estimated restart time, all of which, as I said earlier on, is eating into the provided. That spotter's guide is on the marshal's post, so they know exactly who they're looking at. Yellow flags are there. The red flag was required. Stopwatch there, so they know how long the session has got to go. And there you're looking at South Bank. The building at the front is the race control building, and then behind it is South Bank, and that strip of land at the very back, just behind where the cars are parked, the old rallycross circuit that John Webb used in the 1980s and early 1990s, brought the rallycross Grand Prix here, and they used to go across the top of that. It was known as the knife edge, across the top of South Bank.
And of course South Bank, I mean, going back now to the heady days of club racing at Brands Hatch, South Bank used to be absolutely chock-a-block. And when a race winner was doing his slow-down lap, everybody would run to their cars, stand on the horn, and it was just a part of what made Brands Hatch unique. Yeah. And then the fun police came along, and they probably don't like you doing that because it might offend local residents.
Indeed. Right, the Mercedes is back in the pit lane. The fast lane is open. You can see cars just had a shot going up and down the pit road now. So restart confirmed, 10 past 10. It's going to give us, as I say, about 20 minutes, just under. Now that the drivers, John, have seen that Mercedes in trouble at Stirling's, do they treat the circuit with a bit more caution, or do they just think, well, it won't happen to me, it was all down to him, it's his fault, we'll just carry on as normal?
I would think that everybody would just carry on doing what they do normally. I mean, obviously, it will remind people that the exit of Stirling's, and that curb in particular, is notorious for catching out the unwary or maybe the inexperienced, and I think might have been more inexperienced than anything else. So, yeah, it'll be noted, but once you're in your car, you're running at what I would call a speed appropriate to what your potential is, then you're just thinking about it as one of the 9 or 11 actually corners here at Brands Hatch, all of which are a challenge, but all of which give a driver, you know, an immense sense of, when you do it well, you really feel you've done it well. That's one of the benefits that Brands has always given to any competitor. If you do a good job at Brands Hatch, you know you've done a good job. It feels good.
Now, Mirko Bortolotti and Christian Engelhardt's Lamborghini is good to go. Bortolotti, we are told, is going to be behind the wheel of it, but the car's not yet broken a timing beam to confirm that. There he is, ready to venture out onto the circuit. And more teams now getting themselves into that fast lane.
They're still waiting for the lights to go green.
About 5 seconds or so away before the race director, Alain Ardon, will give the signal, which is
still red. Oh, it's gone green now. Yeah.
Yes, by a couple of seconds.
We're a couple of seconds behind what's happening down in the pit lane. So the track has gone green. Everybody will now, and this will be the field. Well, what would have been 21 cars is now 20, and it'll be interesting to see how long it takes for the pro drivers to get down to the lap times that we've seen so far, the quickest being the 19 Lamborghini of Ezequiel Perez compact on a 124.7. You'd have to think, give any of the top pros, take Mirko Bortolotti in the 63 Lamborghini, a sister car to the 19, I would say within 5 laps he would be matching or even exceeding the time of that 19 car. In fact, it's now the 19 car has been driven by Andrea Caldarelli, who is the pro driver or the experienced driver in that two-driver lineup.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I know that they want the track time, but so many have gone out in a line and straight away find themselves in traffic, whereas the more savvy teams have waited a third of a lap, a half of a lap, and get clear track space.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get literally to the very front of the grid, maybe 2 cars back from the front, then often it is just, you wait for 1 lap, let these cars that are, and we look at the Lexus, just getting that first view of the Lexus here at Brands Hatch, Christian Klein behind the wheel, and that's going to be an experience for the Emile Frey Racing with this car at Brands Hatch on a much more undulating racetrack than when we first saw it running, which was in Zolder for the opening round of the Blancpain Sprint and Endurance Championship.
With that team doing the Nürburgring 24 hours next week, as are many of these teams, because that's another must-do GT race that teams want to do and manufacturers want your team to do on their behalf. So it's a very busy month for many of them. Number 14 then, Albert Costa at the wheel. And this is the Lexus that he shares with Christian Klein. The graphic showed us Klein, the timing screen says Costa. I'll go with the timing screen because that's got the transponder setting, and it says Costa on the windscreen, so ignore what the graphic was telling you. I think that goes off the entry list, whereas what we have in the timing booth goes off the transponder. So over the timing line now goes the Lexus onto its first flying lap. Of course, the circuit getting busier and busier now. That Mercedes, by the way, now that it's clear of the circuit, it doesn't go back to the team instantly, it goes to Parc Fermé first of all.
Yes.
So again, that eats into the time that squad has to rebuild it.
Yes, it's frustrating for a team because they want to get the car back into the garage and get to work with it as quickly as possible. Well, a little bit of after use, so not quite clear who was going to let which driver go into Graham Hill Bend. The first 114 Lexus. Stefano Otelli and Norbert Siedler behind the wheel. So a little bit of initial out lap, just not quite certain what to do.
So the newbies, as it were, in this second part of the session, Christopher Mies is out on track, Dries Vanthoor is out on track, Albert Costa we've talked about, Mirko Bortolotti, also Michael Meadows and Stefano Otelli here in 114. They're the extras, if you like, that we've now got onto the circuit.
The 32 team Parker Bentley, Ian Logie and Callum McLeod, it's actually done a good run. It's the quickest of the Pro-Am cars, 125.5. That's just literally a lap that's been recorded on that last lap. But I said 5 laps for what I would expect to see a pro driver in a top team beginning to get down to the lap times we've seen from the 19 Grasso Racing Lamborghini with a 124.7.
And that's a Callum McLeod time, the former British Formula Ford champion. Everybody goes on, and rightly so, without Nick Tandy, great Porsche factory driver, Le Mans winner. Well, it's Callum McLeod that beat Nick in a very fierce fight in Formula Ford that season. So Callum clearly is of ability, and has found a happy home with Ian Logie and Team Parker Racing in this Bentley 6 fastest years. Now there, number 2, this is the car in the hands of Dries Vanthoor, winner 2 weeks ago at Monza in endurance, and Dries Vanthoor is 14th fastest on now really his first proper flying lap of the session.
Yes, and I think Dries Vanthoor did an outstanding job in this session, although there was an overtake which was deemed to be off the race track which he passed going down the main straight, but it all got turned around when the position he gave up had to be given back because of a pressure pass that was deemed to be unfair. So the young Belgian driver, again, look, that just says one thing, that says confidence. He is now so confident with the Audi, gives plenty of room in the exit of Sterling's personal best first and second sector. We don't know what the lap time will be, that will come very shortly. But every time I see Dries Vanthoor behind the wheel of an Audi, it just looks like he's growing and growing in stature.
And He'd done precious little really before coming into GT racing. He goes 10th there straight away, 1:26.070. Belgian driver, Belgian team, which is going to help, but brother Laurens Vanthoor with a big reputation. But here you've got Dries Vanthoor perhaps able to match that. Right, Akker's other Mercedes are on track, including their 88, which we put Michael Meadows behind the wheel of, 13th.
So Daisy, a little bit of a wobble at the end of the back straight into Hawthorne's, one of the really big corners here at Brands Hatch. High-speed corner, again a big commitment. Can actually carry a lot more speed than you maybe realise, because it's on an incline, and although the camera tends to flatten that out, but it is quite a steep incline, and consequently you can actually carry more speed than you might have thought had it just been a total flat approach and entry into the corner.
So the session with 13 3/4 minutes still to run. Michael Meadows booms past the pits. Does he improve on that lap? He does not, in fact. That was stays, in fact, 13th, but 1:26.765, a better lap time. Woods dust kicked up in the background by number 17 Audi, which was Stuart Leonard earlier, and he's now Frédéric Verviche. He's got rather scruffy tyres as a result of all of that, so Verviche trying hard, as you've now got Andrea Caldarelli in the quickest car, which is the Lamborghini Ezequiel Perez compact was behind the wheel of earlier. Verviche is second. Pierre Caffer is now third fastest, number 55. Pierre Caffer has taken over from Peter Scothorst. Again, potential winner after potential winner after potential winner as you go down the entry list.
Well, some very strong driver pairings, and this is one of many. And Audi seem to have managed to scoop up some of these very competitive drivers. Some of them are more experienced, some have been around a few more seasons than others. But going back to looking at the 88 Mercedes, Michael Meadows, who along with Marcello Raffaele, this is a car one would have to put on your, if you want to have a wish list of who might be your top three. Now that's how you run the curb. The way Michael Meadows exited, he let the car run dead straight. He ran the curb but kept the car pointing in a straight line, didn't try to bring it back off the curb too quickly.
Up to the line he comes then, two personal bests. This should be an improvement. And Michael Meadows then, as he goes over the timing line, does a 1:26.276. The time is better, but he's still 13th in the classification. So although he's going faster, so are lots of other people around him, including 25 now. Christopher Hasse, who's taken over from Simon Gachet in the Santalok Audi.
So there he is, Andrea Caldarelli, having taken over from Ezequiel Perez compact. I mean, I don't get the Ezequiel bit, the Perez bit. Anyway, a charming guy all the way from Argentina, and again, as the arm, if you like to call it that, of that partnership, improving literally by the race.
Absolutely, I was going to say he gets better and better and better all the time, and he's able to do pretty decent lap times now, up there with the front runners. So down towards the right at Hawthorne's comes Andrea Caldarelli. He's not going to do anything sparkling on this lap because he's not improving within the sectors. It's looking okay though. But we're not looking at pretend pole position laps here.
Getting up to around about 120-25 miles an hour as you come through Dingle Dell up into Sheen, the curve, 240 kilometers per hour, just under 150 miles an hour at the end of Pilgrim's Drop and the climb into Hawthorne's. So that is the quickest part of this Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit for the GT cars. Interesting to just watch and see what 225, 30, yeah, 232 before you get onto the brakes to get into paddock bend.
We've got 10 more minutes of the session to go. You can see the countdown continuing atop the screen as Caldarelli goes into Druids. Last improvement was a 25.077 from Christopher Hasse, who is fifth. Also, Franck Pereira's on a mission now in his Grasser Racing team Lamborghini, up to 8th fastest in the car that he's taken over from Loris Hezemans. And Michael Meadows is up into 11th now. And still, interestingly, Corneve's time is 14th, even though 20 cars have done a time. There are still quite a few who've not yet got onto his pace. Pierre Caffer then you're looking at, in 55. This is the car that he has taken over in the session from Peter Skoghorst, and he comes down now into Hawthorns along the Derek Minter Straight up towards Westfield, one of the re-profile corners over the years.
It's also still maintained. I know they've tried to level out the surface there, but you can still see how much movement. There are little undulations in the back of all the cars, picked up particularly on the 30 or 37 BMW. It looked like it was just not giving compliance to its driver, but even the Audi is just the back of the car hopping over those little undulations.
Mirko Bortolotti is a man on a mission. He's done an absolute best in the last sector, starting the lap that he's on. He's done a 25.387 to go 7th. Here's Pierre Capper going over the timing line, stays 3rd. But Mirko Bortolotti has done personal best in the first sector, 7th fastest he currently is as you ride now with the Audi.
Up the hill into Druids, get it, tuck it in, keep the wheel basically on the curb. Then you release the steering, let the car run out to the exit. Then straight line it as much as possible. As we can now go back to the 63 Lamborghini, Mirko Bortolotti behind the wheel. So on this lap, personal best in sector 1 at 27.3, which is round about a tenth or so, 2/10 off the quickest of the Audis. Christopher Haase has done a 27.1. So this will be potential. Well, he's backed off. What's going on? What is going on? I thought he'd backed off, then the BMW backed off, and it looked a bit confusing. So this lap will not be of any benefit to the 63 Lamborghini.
So he braked coming under the bridge, which was a bit odd. Whether he felt that he'd been compromised by the BMW, I don't know, and tried to walk that lap and go again. Anyway, 8 minutes are on the clock, and Bortolotti then stays 7th fastest. It was a slower lap in comparison. We've got Andrew Watson in the BMW, by the way. And this is Mirko Bortolotti's view, John, down through Graham Hill Bend.
Yes, whoop. Keep it, well, 2 wheels are permitted on the exit of Graham Hill Bend, then this sort of long curve that leads into Surtees, Cooper Straight, and always been a variety of options as to which way you want to take Surtees, but the main issue is to get out of it as quickly as possible. Then you drop down to the compression at the very bottom, up to 242 kilometers per hour. 160 in mid-corner, and then the bumps of Westfield and the drop down, and Christian Engelhardt, well, he's watching it, keeping an eye on what is.
He's had a fairly quiet morning, hasn't he? He's not done anything.
He's not done very much, and it doesn't look like he's going to get to do very much either. Just let Mirko Bortolotti go out and do the running, and runs the curve on the exit of Stirling's, but keeps the car pointed again in a straight line. So then through clearways into Clark, and then again important to get the car as straight as possible. You don't want to have any scrub on the exit of Clark, and really you hardly get a time to draw breath. Down to 3rd gear into paddock, and again slightly compromised with traffic ahead of him. That last lap for Bortolotti was an improvement by 1 position up to 6th place at 1:25.095, but still that is 3/10 of a second off the quickest lap still for the sister 19 Lamborghini.
Grasser Racing team rather vocal after Monza about how they felt the Lamborghinis had been hampered by the balance of performance, but the technical division that looks after Blancpain GT Racing standing by the BOP for that event, and it is a very complicated process anyway. Somebody's always going to be saying they have been affected or needed more power or a kind of BOP, but the Lamborghini, that was a very dominant car last year, 6th at the moment. But again, what do you read into that? Because you don't know what fuel load it's on, what tyres it's on, all these different imponderables before you get to the really serious bit of qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, take Monza as an example. It is a night power circuit, and if the BOP has been adjusted to maybe take away a little bit of the horsepower, or you have to carry an additional amount of weight, which I think was what was the case with the Lamborghini. Here at Brands Hatch, it's really more about, well, it is a handling circuit and it's a driver's circuit. So those 2 elements, handling and driving, can actually maybe make some small compensation for any BOP adjustments that might be going your way. As the 88 comes across start-finish line, still down in 12th place. So Michael Meadows just doing a run and hasn't been able to improve on his current best of a 25.9.
The other one that's perplexing me a little bit is number 1, Christopher Mies, because that car that he shares with Alex Riveras, winners at Monza, It's only 18th fastest. Its last lap was a 2:25. It's done a 27.3, which is about 2.5 seconds or so away from what it should be doing. So there's trouble at mill for number 1 Audi. 4 3/4 minutes still to run as you look at Albert Costa in the quicker of the two Lexus at the moment. So that car 17th. So what have we got else that might happen before the end? Nico Bastian improving to 11th in the Mercedes.
Well, Pierre Caffa currently is third. He's in the pit, so he's 4 minutes remaining as we ride on board with the 14 Lexuses have come through. Currently the slowest car overall, 1:29.2, and well, that's its quickest lap, 29.239, which is not, in my view. Stefano Telli in the sister car has done a 1:26.4, almost what, 2.8 seconds quicker. So I think this is just going through a systems and whatever. It is not representative of the pace, even not taking what you might best describe as the optimum racing line as he comes through Graham Hill Bend.
Now Bortolotti is up to third. He did a personal and an absolute best on his way to a 1:24.986. So he's 0.007 away from Fred Verviche and 0.232 away from Andrea Caldarelli. So we have actually got Lamborghini's first and third. Not entirely sure Gottfried Grasser could be too annoyed, can he?
No, I think he'd be quite happy with that. I think it reflects the car's handling and reflects the layout of Brands Hatch. So the emphasis goes away from the straight line, performance that was really Monza dominant. Interestingly, the number 2 Audi, which Dries van Voort had started the latter part of the session, and he's handed over to Will Stevens. So that car still not really showing what I had hoped to see or expected to see, was pace consummate with the skill of the two guys.
Yeah, I mean, the Caldarelli Lamborghini was out from the get-go, admittedly with a different driver, but the Bortolotti car, which is third, was also only allowed out in that second element of the session. So you can't even say that you need the mileage, can you? Because that proves that you can come out in the last 20 minutes and go quickly, whereas numbers 1 and 2 Audis just not getting on with the job. 17 in contrast, his second fastest there is number 1. It is 19th of 20. Alex Riveras at the wheel, who doesn't exactly know Brands Hatch very well, in fairness to him. So maybe that's the plan, just give him the track time. Well, he knows that bit now because he's gone way, way wide at Graham Hill Bend.
Yes, and that is a no-no. I mean, we keep going on about it, but there will be no doubt this lap, if it is any further improvement on his previous best, will be disallowed, because that is 4 wheels well and truly off the tarmac, and those pressure pads will be sending that information. You don't need the pressure pads, you can see it. So that's one of those. It's frustrating for a driver. They see the space is available, and it is fundamentally the instinct of current drivers of all kinds and all formulas, where there is space, they want to use it.
And number 1 must respect the track limits at turn 3. Spot on, John.
Didn't take very long.
No,
it didn't.
He was bang to rights though, wasn't he? I mean,
oh yeah.
You could see what was going on. There's less than a lap time left in the session now. Bortolotti has bailed. Also, Stefano Telli is in. Although, having said that Bortolotti has bailed, I think they're going to send the car back out. It might have just been a practice pit stop, but the car is heading down the pit lane again. But I'm not really sure what they're going to achieve, because he'll take the flag at the end of this lap. But the car is back out onto the circuit, number 63, with Christian Engelhardt at the wheel. Yeah, so it was the practice pit stop. That was the rationale behind the stop, and then send the car out again. What can you read into this session? Anything?
I think most people, especially at the first half, they had the benefit of probably fresher tyres. Those that have gone out in the second half, which you might describe broadly as those are most likely to be the most competitive driver car pairings, have used probably the least best available set. So I don't think this will have a huge degree of bearing in the overall scheme of things by the time we go through qualifying, because once everybody runs on new rubber, new Pirelli rubber, then we will see what we would imagine to be the normal form coming to the top.
So the flag is imminent as the final few seconds tick down, and at the end of it, it looks like it's going to be a Lamborghini that is the fastest then. Andrea Caldarelli and Ezequiel Perez Compact Flag out, you're riding on board 31 Aaron Taylor-Smith, who's hogged it for this session. I should imagine Josh Cagill, the former bike racer, will do the next session. And Aaron Taylor-Smith comes then down towards Clearways. Is he going to take the flag on the circuit? Oh, not Aaron Taylor-Smith, the timing screen said it was, but that was Aaron in the garage, so Josh Cagill is behind the wheel. So there's a transponder glitch, or it's in the wrong setting. So Josh Cagill, take two, takes the car to the flag and is 14th fastest.
Well, I'll have to say I anticipated, I thought we were going to see more from the cars that went out in the latter part of this session coming to the fore, and really that's not been the case in the way that I'd expected or anticipated. So we'll go back to the question you asked. I think they were using the least best sets of rubber and keeping the best sets for when it really will be important, principally when they go into qualifying, and then for the 2 1-hour sprint races which will follow.
The cars being flagged off around what's called the back door of the pit lane. So instead of doing a long in-lap to save some time in the timetable, the cars are waved straight through into the rear approach to the pit lane. The last couple of cars still taking the flag, but it's Lamborghini then, the top of the times come the end of the session. Andrea Caldarelli and Ezequiel Perez Companc the fastest. And we'll look at the times in a moment. As you see there, the Callum Cloudy and Loggy Bentley for Team Parker Racing heading into the pits. Temperatures are going up here as well. It's going to be a rather different feel to the circuit, I would venture to suggest. For the second session, it's going to be a lot warmer.
Yes, and track temperature, no doubt. It's going to be a really warm weekend. And through the weekend, tomorrow is going to be a warmer day than currently today. Today is just stunning, perfect. And other than track conditions, they always improve the more running you get. But that's aside simply from whatever the ambient and track temperatures might be. There was a session for the Porsche. They did a half-hour session before this got underway. So track is probably still in the process of evolving. As we look at Michael Meadows in the 88 Mercedes being pushed back into its pit spot.
So at the end of free practice 1, interrupted by the red flag, Ezequiel Perez Companc's time, putting them to the top. Stuart Leonard second, ahead of Mirko Bortolotti, and then Peter Schockhorst's Audi. Nicolas Jamin is 5th in the Mercedes he shares with Felix Sarales. Then it's Simon Gachet and Christopher Hasse from his older winners Stein Schockhorst and Kelvin van der Linde. Ian Loggy, thanks to Callum McLeod, 8th. Loris Hezemans and Franck Pereira 9th, with Nico Bastian and Jack Manchester 10th. Neil Stevenart 11th, and Michael Meadows, there's more to come from that car surely, is 12th. 13th, number 2 Audi, the Will Stevens time. He got in the car late in the session. Josh Cagill and Aaron Taylor-Smith 14th of the Parker Bentley from Pitty-Biran Bakti and Carlo Van Dam. Then 35 Mercedes, a Corneve crash. He's taken at least 2 Corneves off the car. That needs a rebuild before FP2. Then you've got the first of the 2 Lexus ahead of the sole BMW. A very disappointing 19th, number 1 Audi. But again, I'm sure there's more to come. And then 20th for Christian Klein, driven Lexus. In terms of the championship, we've been to Zolder, of course, for the qualifying and sprint race there. Different points awarded across the 2 races, and Kelvin van der Linde it is, with Stein Schockhorst, who has the championship advantage from Mirko Bortolotti and Christian Engelhardt. Michael Meadows and Raffaele Marciello come next from Companc and Caldarelli, Vantor and Stevens, and then Stuart Leonard and Robin Frins. Robin away on other duties this weekend, hence a different co-driver for Stuart Leonard. So, an interesting first free practice session, and we'll have a look at the best bits of the hour of track time afforded to the drivers, with Loris Hezemans pressing on early in his Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini, and Stuart Leonard likewise, but he had this little moment coming through Hawthorns. He got away with it, powered on, and put the car to the top of the times as Aaron Taylor-Smith was exploring Brands Hatch in a rear-wheel drive car. The Bentley going ultimately to 14th of the 20 cars. The sole BMW, however, was not really showing the right pace. Andrew Watson getting the car up to 18th, Pitty-Biran Bakti